Well, I won't lie, I'm actually pretty tired right now. I could probably spend less than 20 minutes laying here and falling asleep, guys. But I did want to talk about the last time I felt this tired, which was back in March of this year. And on one really early Monday morning, probably around 5 a.m., I'm usually awake at 5 a.m., but I was sleeping at this time. But my phone rang. And usually for my phone to ring while I'm sleeping, you've got to call me multiple times for it to ring. And so it just jolted me awake. And I pick up, I'm pretty groggy right now, and not happy because I was tired. And on the other end was this guy who had this panicked voice. He was just saying, hey, the Wi-Fi is not working. Could you just put back the old Wi-Fi so we can get up and running and get going? And mind you, this was a guy who's probably about 3 hours away from me, and the Wi-Fi he was talking about was already in the dumpster, so there's no way I was going to go dumpster diving. And so I just want to take you guys through this nightmare that I woke up to. Not a nightmare I had while I was asleep, but while I was awake. And the day before, the reason why he called me was me and two other guys went to this automotive facility. They build cars, and we replaced their old Wi-Fi system with a brand new Wi-Fi system. We spent probably 15 hours just replacing access points, and while my two other guys were replacing access points, I had checked in with some of the folks to confirm that, hey, everything's working, right? I don't want to replace 100 plus access points only to find out that it's not working at all, and then we have to put back the other 100 access points. And so that kind of began the story where Wi-Fi is down. It's such a vague problem, right? That could mean anything. To me, it could mean anything. But the way they described it were our tools aren't working. And these tools, they work over Wi-Fi. They get their instructions from a controller, a tool controller, that tells the tool, this bolt you're gonna do this amount of torque. So you don't have a guy who's manually torquing these bolts. I'm not a car guy, so I don't know. But I just know that it gets an instruction. And so they have a tool, he's ready to put that to a bolt, but it doesn't have the instruction. And usually there's a little indicator that says, I don't have a connection. And then they told me, too, that the laptops weren't connected. I'm like, okay, well, that's not good. Why didn't you tell me this before I left and spent 3 hours driving back home? And so I had to get up. I didn't change. I was still tired, groggy. I just opened up my laptop. And so I became what any detective would do and just start investigating. And so what I knew is that the suspects here were these new access points. And that's typically the blame, right? There's no connectivity, nothing, no Wi-Fi, squarely on Wi-Fi. The victims here were two SSIDs, two WLANs that they were connecting to. The tools connected to one SSID, the laptops, the phones, your watch, they connect to a different SSID. But I still didn't know what the issue was. Still too vague. I didn't know who else was affected. It was just in one area of this facility that's about 800 and 900,000 square feet, or are we talking about some small section? And also, like, when did you guys find out? Because when I was there and you guys tested it, it was working, right? And so when the next morning comes and all these workers are showing up, now you're telling me that production's at a standstill, money's being wasted, should I send these guys home? So no one's happy, I'm not happy. I didn't want to wake up my other guys to say, hey, let's go put back the old APs. And so I had to take this really, very calm approach. I'm a pretty calm guy, I don't really get mad at anybody, not in your face kind of guy. And so I just kind of broke it down for them. I said, okay, let's think about this for a second. Just help me identify where the issue is, and I'll start there. Don't tell me the whole facility's not in production. Just let me look at one thing, and then I'll take a look and see what we can gather. Because I wanted data that could help me pinpoint to where the issue might be. And so being able to create a picture of an issue and then translate what they're saying, Wi-Fi down, to what technically is the problem, that was my goal, right? And so I had to come up with using a troubleshooting methodology. There's been a lot of talks on that. You should have a methodology that you want to look at. And luckily, with a cloud dashboard or any dashboard that provides you with information, you can get to a root cause a lot faster, right? You don't have to start digging from square one, or I don't have to get into a car and speed down the highway to get there. And so as I looked at the dashboard, I saw things were at least looking pretty good to the start, right? Our time to connect's pretty good. It's green. So is the successful connects. It's green. But I decided to kind of dive into some of the classifiers, the subclassifiers, and I noticed two things, right? The two things that stuck out to me was association was pretty bad, and so was DHCP. And obviously we know the DHCP also always gets blamed for a lot of things. Usually that's the issue. And I really wanted to say, hey, can you check your DHCP server? But obviously if we had just moved to a new system and the previous system was working just fine, like I don't see how that could be a DHCP issue. Maybe it was something else. And then I just see other logs that can kind of help me point in that direction. So I started to dive into the authorization piece because I thought that was interesting. If you can't get authorized past that, there's no way you're even going to get to DHCP. And so when I looked at it, I saw this one specific log. I asked for a MAC address. I just said, hey guys, help me figure out who has an issue for sure. Give me a MAC address of that device. And earlier I showed a screenshot of the tool. They didn't want to give me a MAC address of the tool because you actually had to pull out the battery to get the MAC address. But my argument was, well, the tool's not going to work anyways, so you might as well just get the MAC address. And so once that was provided to me, I could go and look at what that client journey looked like. And when I looked at it, I see this one message here, then that description, something's passing gas, right? Fernay talked about gas. And I was like, what's gas? What is that? But luckily, there's a PCAP, right? And so yesterday, we had Peter talking about knowing your protocol. And yeah, it is really great to know your protocol. So when you got to dive into the Wireshark and PCAP files, you can understand what you're looking at. But I got lucky here where there's one message in the association response from the AP what the problem actually is. But you have to find that frame in order to get there. And when I looked at that AP response to the client, it actually was denying the client from associating, from joining the access point. And I thought that was kind of interesting because was this a problem before? Or is this a problem now because we have a new Wi-Fi system? And so here, as I'm looking into this problem, I didn't know how to fix it right off the bat. I knew it was a problem. So I had to go open a ticket with the support system because I'm used to the way I was brought up with Wi-Fi was with the controllers, and you can fine-tune every single type of setting, right? If it's on the GUI, if it's not in the GUI, it's somewhere in the CLI. But there's no CLI here with the cloud, and so I had to open a ticket. And support was actually pretty quick in enabling a drop-down feature on 2.4 gigahertz on the RF profile to change the preamble setting. And I thought, okay, that was pretty cool. I can just change it to long because the tools wouldn't connect with a short preamble, and that's it, right? So I set that setting, went back to sleep, right? No. The client said, that didn't fix it. We still have issues. Nothing's connecting. The Wi-Fi is still down. I'm like, guys, quit saying the Wi-Fi is down. The APs are up and running. I see clients. I just need a little bit more of a descriptive issue that's happening. And so they're like, okay, I can see that the device is connected to Wi-Fi, but I just don't have internet. I'm like, okay, that's a lot better than saying Wi-Fi is down, because now you're admitting the Wi-Fi is up. It's just no network. And when I started looking more into the PCAPs again, I thought, okay, well, let me look at the DHCP problem. I thought maybe the DHCP problem would go away if I fixed the association problem. And so when I looked at it, I see, all right, DHCP, you can see DORA going on, and I take note of the router. And so this, I don't know how many of you guys work with other IT people. It's either the Wi-Fi or the firewall. That's the problem, right? So here I'm gonna punt it over to the firewall guy and say, hey, can we see where the DHCP is being pointed to? But I still wasn't convinced that it was a DHCP issue because I wanted them to replicate that problem so we can gather more data. And so as I go through this issue, I find another client that still has the problem, not an association problem, but a DHCP problem. And I look at it more closely and I go, okay, well, this log's kind of interesting, right? This isn't a Wi-Fi problem, but I do have a device that's spoofing the gateway. And if I have a device that's on the same network with a gateway IP address of the same router, then maybe the DHCP traffic's going to that guy, and he's just not forwarding any of that traffic. That's totally possible. But since I'm remote, I didn't know where this device was. I could maybe find it on the Wi-Fi network and try to kick it off, but I couldn't find it. And also, I was like, why is your gateway 244.11? That's such a weird IP. Like, I would think maybe a .1 or something. But I had to confirm with the IT team that's there, trying to validate, like, hey, how is your network set up? Is this truly the gateway for your network? And they said, yeah, that's it. And I said, okay, well, you got a device on your network that's trying to pretend to be your gateway. Why? And so I had to like move mountains to get access to their network because trying to hand it off to them, like it's clearly not a Wi-Fi issue. And I'm the Wi-Fi guy trying to help them fix the issue that everyone still thinks it's the Wi-Fi. If I said, hey, your guys' problem's not Wi-Fi, it's a gateway issue, they would just look at me, the users would be like, well, we still can't build our carts. And so I had to get access to the firewall, figure out where that is. And could you guys see why there would be a problem where a device would try to be a gateway or try to spoof the gateway? It took a long time for the internal IT team to find this. Mind you, a firewall that I have never logged into before, and I had to figure out where to find this information. So it took me about, I don't know, an hour and looking up some help docs to figure out how this firewall works. But they had a DHCP scope on this subnet, and the range for the scope is quite large. It is covering the whole network, right? Even the .1, but also their actual gateway lives in that scope. And everywhere I was trying to look for an exclusion. I'm like, you guys are excluding the gateway, right? From the gateway IP from being handed out. And they're like, no, but we could fix that. I'm like, fix it, because I don't know how to fix it on this firewall. And so that's it, right? Problem's all gone. I can go back to sleep. Well, at this point, I should probably have coffee because I've been up for 4 hours. But the problem still existed. They kept saying, hey, we still have problems. When I go from this part of the facility and I'm on this access point, I see the LED turn blue. And when I walk to this part of the facility, the LED turns blue, but I don't have internet. I'm like, I still don't think that's a Wi-Fi issue, but I'll try to help if the network guys aren't able to help you guys. And yeah, the network guys were nowhere to be found. Like, I could not reach them. And it was pretty hard. And finally, I got a hold of one. He was in a meeting, and I was like, I hope it's a meeting about why this network ain't working, because I don't know what other meeting you'd be into. And so I finally got access to their switches. Now, they're running Juniper switches, but it wasn't in the dashboard. They just weren't there yet in the journey. And so yesterday, Alec was talking about having large language models to kind of look through logs. Well, these guys aren't there yet, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who aren't there yet, so we're going to still have to get used to reading logs. And as I looked at every switch, trying to map out how this network is built, creating network diagrams from scratch, they had dozens of switches. Well, I looked at least their logs. That's the first thing I looked at, so show logs, and came across a lot of these messages here, right? Now, prior to this, I had told the IT team, like weeks prior, how they should configure their switch ports for the new access points that they were going to install. Because previously, they had tunneled all the traffic from the AP to the controller, and now all the traffic's going to be dropped locally. You got to create a trunk port, need a VLAN, tag all the VLANs for your WLANs on that switch port. I was told, yeah, that's all good. We're good, dude. It's a Wi-Fi problem. And I said, okay, well, I have logs here that show you have port security enabled on every switch port that the AP connects to, and it's only allowing the first 3 MAC addresses. Your first one is going to be your AP MAC address and the first 2 clients. And that would explain why when someone migrates from or roams from one part of the facility on one AP to another AP, that they join, but they don't get an IP. And that's why we have this classifier for DHCP with requests unresponsive and renews unresponsive. And I said, could you, I'm not going to do it, but could you just change all these ports? I'm sure you could automate it. You guys are smart, but just fix it so I can go back to sleep. And that fixed all the issues, right? Now I could finally go back to sleep. Well, I was able to go back to sleep, but it was already way too late. I was awake by that time. And the lessons that I learned here, and I put a lot of the blame on myself for this one because I was a big part of this project of migrating from one vendor to another vendor, and a lot of it just was poor planning. And we usually want to have a system in place that moves everything smoothly, right? So all this planning is super critical to the point where what are we going to do with the configurations? How are we going to do it? What's the plan once we take an access point down and plug in a new one? And then talk about what we would automate. And then the other thing was I trusted that the local IT team was going to do their part, right? I had listed out everything they would do, and they told me they would. But if you talk to other IT people here, you would say, yeah, trust, but also verify that they did it. I should have verified with them how they configured their switch ports and which ones they did. Maybe they did it to the wrong ports. And then also testing. Now, they did tell me they tested. They showed me their test. And when they showed me their test, it actually didn't work. We got the new access points. I had them plug it in. They were like, yeah, we'll test it right now. Nothing. Same type of issue we had. So I outlined, hey, you got to configure the switch port. Like, I did all that. And then a few weeks later, they said, yeah, we tested it. Everything's good. I should have verified how they did the test. And it turned out they did the test in a very isolated environment with all the right configs. They didn't mimic how the change would have been done when we were doing the actual migration. So again, trust but verify and do it again, kind of like crossing the street, look both ways. And then the communication. Sometimes using Teams or Slack is not the best way to handle a network emergency. Like, pick up the phone, talk, don't text, because we need to get it fixed. Ultimately, we're servicing the end user, and the end users, they're just there to do their work. And when they're just standing around, I'm sure some guys like standing around doing nothing, but these guys needed to produce cars, and it was really hurting their revenue at this point. And then ultimately, understanding at least high level how the network works, that to me probably would have saved me multiple hours, because I had no idea how their network was laid out. I didn't know where the switches connected. I didn't know what subnets they had. I just knew the VLAN numbers. But that's because I had assumed that the local IT team was going to help and finish that part. And so that's really my story, that nightmare of a troubleshooting situation of why I thought my Wi-Fi network was perfect, but it really wasn't, even though it was a wired network issue, aside from the preamble stuff. But if you guys want to connect with me, that's a QR code to my LinkedIn, but I appreciate it. And thanks for having me.